Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 1 of Momstrosity podcast. For those that don't know me, my name is Kelsie. I have been a mama since 2018. I have 2 amazing kiddos. My son is 6, my daughter just turned 4, and I really wanted to have this podcast not just for moms, for parents, for people just going through life. I've been through it, okay? So if my stories can help give you guys any type of encouragement, motivation, then I call this podcast to win. Initially, I wanted to go ahead and get started with thanking my amazing friends at I105.3. They have an amazing podcast studio here. It's not just for me to use, it's for anybody that wants to come in and rent it and do your podcast. Whatever it is that you want to talk about, come in here. They have all the equipment for you, and I cannot thank them enough for giving me this opportunity to film Momstrosity here at the radio station. So, what prompted me to finally take Momstrosity off the ground, essentially, so it used to be a blog that I would write right after I had my son, just for a little bit. It was for an outlet. It was journaling. So I titled it Momstrosity at the time. And then I thought, well, if there's one thing that I can do, it is talk. What really got me into this podcasting idea, though, is there has been a trend it's not a trend, actually. It's just something that's gone viral. It's the 17 diapers thing. So there was a mom who was newly postpartum, and she went around her house collecting diapers, used diapers, okay? And she just counted how many she had in a day. And she went around and she posted that for everybody to see. Of course, there were your typical parent shamers. Oh my gosh, this is disgusting. I can't believe you would do that. But I think what she was genuinely trying to do was shed light on sometimes postpartum just looks like that. Your 17 diapers isn't always 17 diapers. And from that, people picked that up, and I even did it. People picked this up and ran with it and said, my 17 diapers was crying while I was washing the dishes because I just felt like I wasn't doing enough 6 days, 7 days postpartum. Or, I said my 17 diapers was my story almost ending 4 months postpartum because I did suffer from postpartum anxiety and postpartum depression. And so I think it really shed a lot of light on the fact that postpartum can be so misconstrued. Of course, we want to bond with our babies. Social media as a whole just makes things even more difficult, in my opinion. We really want to paint this perfect picture, when in reality, we were all struggling with something at some point. Because at the end of the day, somebody handed you this new life and said, all right, now you get to go home and feed it and keep it healthy and nurtured and do this on your own. And no, the nurse does not get to come home with you. So I feel like all of us have had some type of journey, whether it have been, just the baby blues, or if you had full-fledged postpartum anxiety or depression, and seeing the key factors of that and kind of knowing where you can pinpoint, is this baby blues? Is this postpartum depression? And knowing those warning signs, I was not equipped with that. I was not given the opportunity to be ready and equipped for that. So, my son's labor was pretty scary. I had preeclampsia, I had gestational diabetes, my liver function was awful. So I was already a nervous wreck, okay? I was going into delivery a nervous wreck because, like everybody, I'm on WebMD Googling what could happen with preeclampsia, okay? Don't ever do that. But again, I just wanted to know what to expect. And of course, you're reading horror stories that could potentially happen to you or your baby. And so I went into labor with this imminent fear lingering over my head. I wasn't really prepared, I guess. I wasn't in a happy mindset when I went in for my induction. But I feel like the preeclampsia, the scariness, it kind of just started this snowball. And I had no idea just how impactful that would be after I got my son home. So I labored with my son for 24 hours. So that was a good time. Delivered him in the wee hours of the morning in January. And matter of factly, what's funny about that, and I remember it, is there was like a Winter Storm Jackson coming, and it was spelled the same way as my son's name, and it was on my TV at the hospital. So that's always something I kind of remember and cling to. But, I had him, and one piece of like your pre-going home stuff that you have to kind of complete is watching like these videos on an iPad of like safe sleep, the ABCs of sleep. So my husband and I, of course, watched those videos on like no sleep because I had labored again for 24 hours and then I was too nervous to really sleep. Of course, we were starting nursing. And in a hospital, you just cannot sleep. Okay, like you can't. So we were watching these videos and kind of like felt this weird feeling about them. Like it started to scare me a little bit. Sorry, I had to take a water break and Ohio Valley allergies are trying to take me out, I think. So back to the videos. So you had to watch these videos, these safe sleep videos. And I understand their intent is to educate parents on safe sleep, which is so, so important. Like it is so important to have that education. I just feel like it was so redundant and repetitive and I was already running on no sleep and it was just, new mom, first time mom fears were starting to settle in wake of our discharge getting ready to happen. And so we took my son home and I remember I needed to go pick up like my iron pills on the way home because, they typically prescribe you iron. And my husband was driving us to Walmart to pick the prescription up that my doctor had sent in for me. And I remember just crying. And I was like, I don't want to go home. Like, I am scared to go home. So he drove me around after getting that prescription while I'm bawling my eyes out, scared to death, like for an hour and a half. We didn't come home. We finally get home. I'm exhausted, but I slowly feel it creeping in that like, okay, I'm not going to sleep. Like I'm going to stare at this baby and watch him breathe like every hour of the day, every second of the day. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to stare at him and make sure he's okay. And I would not let my husband, like I got to this point, my husband's like, go shower, go nap. I refused his help, I'll be honest, because again, like I was talking earlier about social media and the world kind of making you feel like you just have to be this perfect person. It's a facade, of course, but I didn't want anyone around me to think I was already failing at being a mother. It honestly mortified me. I'm not going to lie. It scared me to death to disappoint the people around me that I wasn't meeting the expectations of motherhood because I was needing to rest. I was needing to shower. I was needing to tend to my basic needs, and I just wasn't doing that. So I guess my first initial 17 diapers was that I was not showering unless my husband would sit in the bathroom and hold the baby so I could watch him. I was barely brushing my teeth or trying to fix my hair or trying to leave the house. The first time I did dishes, I sat there as the water was running and cried. Like the water instantly made me cry. And this is just a couple days in to postpartum, of course. But back to that first night. The first night we had my son home, I'm sleep deprived. Of course, I told you guys, my labor was a long labor. It was a long labor. And then I stayed in the hospital for 5 days while they made sure my liver enzymes stabilized before they could send me back home. So sitting there and of course hearing all the safe sleep stuff and like all this is playing over and over in my head. There is something, and it may not be for everybody, but there is something that happens when that sun goes down when you're in that newborn phase. I don't know what it is, but there's sometimes, and again, not for everybody, but for me and from other mothers that I've heard their stories, as soon as that sun goes down, just this imminent fear comes over you. Like you worry what will happen in the night. And I was sleep deprived. I remember falling asleep and thinking I had put my son in his bassinet next to me in the bed. I don't really know how long I was asleep. I think honestly it was very brief. But I woke up in a panic because I reached over to find him in his bassinet and he wasn't there. It turns out I had fell asleep with him on my chest. And I think in my sleep when I thought I was putting him in bassinet, I put him next to me in the bed, like in the crevice of my arm. And I panicked I thought I heard him or that he was not breathing. And I know at that moment, that is what really triggered my postpartum depression and anxiety. Uh, and I got up like later that morning. My mom, she had been living a few states away from me, obviously, so she was several hours away. And I remember calling, crying in a panic, and she obviously couldn't get to me. But I'm going to call her out. I'm going to shout her out. My nanny, my grandma, I know some people are like, you have a nanny? No, like my nanny. That's what we call our grandmothers, most of us. But my nanny got on that phone with me and she talked me through it. I was in hysterics. I thought I heard him. I was afraid, and she was more than willing to drive the 45 minutes it would have taken her. And she don't drive that way for just nothing, okay? But she would do it for any of us. She was willing to drive up there and help me and support me at the time, but then I was starting to feel like I was failing because it's like, she did this, my mom did this, like they were able to do it. Why am I panicking? Why am I already needing help? It's been 24 hours. So I started slowly seeping back down into that depression and anxiety again. And kind of pushing away that help. I think that's when it started. Like, I know she would have dropped everything. She'd drop anything for any of us. Matter of fact, she's like my biggest supporter of this podcast. So Nanny, if you're watching this or listening, yes, I called you out. But she was extending her support. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, if I take that support, I'm a failure as a mom because it's 24 hours and I can't even do this thing for 24 hours already and I'm already needing help. When in reality, when someone extends that help to you, like at the time, I definitely encourage that it's not that you're incapable, it's that these moms have been through it and they probably know exactly what you're battling. And we need to, not to me, we should take advantage of that. But I think a lot of parents, a lot of moms felt the way that I was feeling. Like, if I can't do this, I'm failing. And everyone around me that's done it probably perceives me as someone that's not going to be a successful parent, when that's not the case. But from there, it spiraled. I wouldn't let people hold my son because I couldn't see if he was breathing. And I had this really, really bad fear that someone was just going to drop him. Like they were just going to drop him. Like I couldn't get over that fear to the point that it was so difficult for me to allow people to hold my son, to bond with my son, to have time with him. And there were some people in my corner that were like, you just need, to let it happen. And I think they were trying to be encouraging and supportive, but it wasn't received that way. It kept kind of pushing me down that hole of, I'm incapable. I can't do this. I'm doing all the wrong things. I'm pushing people away. I'm not giving them the opportunity to bond with my son. And this was probably 2-3 weeks out, and you think the baby blues are going away. But after that window, you're still feeling that way, right? So my 6-week appointment comes up. I think it was 6 weeks, like your 6-week postpartum appointment comes up. And they have you fill out before you leave the hospital. You have to fill out like this depression and anxiety test, and it scores you prior to leaving the hospital. And when you go in for your 6-week appointment, they have you retake that test. And I remember sitting there, I was by myself. I was scared. It was flu season. So my son and my husband waited for me out in the car. So I was alone and I was pretty open and honest with my scores. And when the provider came in, I will be honest, I didn't feel the support I felt I needed. And this is where I think that stigma around PPD and PPA comes. She made the comment that, oh, your scores have gotten significantly worse. Are you sleeping? Are you taking care of yourself? Are you bonding with your baby? Just questions that I think are general questions because they don't really go super in depth. And I think at that time, it wasn't something really on that office's radar maybe, or she made the comment though. And I think this is really what made me start to recluse even more with speaking my truth. And now I was really feeling, she said, now I need to ask you, do you feel like you're going to hurt your baby? Like, do you think that you're so irritable that you would possibly hurt your baby? And I was taken aback by that. And honestly, I was so scared to answer that question because no, I was not thinking about hurting my baby. And I know that's the stigma around postpartum, is that mothers just become so irritable that that's their thought process. But that is like slim to zero, opportunities that happen. Okay. Like they're very rare, but there's also moms that probably were reaching out for help and not getting the help that they needed, uh, because that's what they were afraid of, is people assuming that you're already at that point, you want to hurt your baby. I genuinely just felt like everything was going to hurt my baby. I was afraid. I wasn't sleeping. Of course I wasn't sleeping because I couldn't watch him breathe. You just think of all these things, and finally I just said, I think I'm okay. I don't think I'm going to hurt my baby. I'm just a little sad. So she recommended I go on some medication because it had been so long and I was still feeling that way. And I had went on the generic version of Zoloft at the time, and I was taking that for a couple of months. And when it started to really get in my system, I honestly think it made it worse. And I'm not against anxiety, depression medications by any means. Like, I'll be the first to tell you, I do take anxiety medicine. It's just that one did not work for me. I felt very out of body. I was kind of really out of touch with reality. I think it was just the first thing thrown at breastfeeding mothers because it's one of the safer options, but really not giving that education of what the side effects could potentially be. So 4 months postpartum comes around. Mind you, I went back to work for like a week and I could not do it. Even though my husband was watching my son because we were working opposite schedules, I could not go to work. So he was working 6 days a week while I was staying at home with our son. He made those sacrifices for me so that I could get through whatever I was battling. And about 4 months, and this is a trigger warning, so this may affect you. This conversation might affect you, so please skip past this part if it is a sensitive topic for you. But I feel it's important to share my journey, to hopefully let another person know, like, you're not going through it by yourself. So 4 months postpartum, we live about 5 or 6 minutes from my husband's work at the time. And I remember thinking, like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not the mother my son needs me to be. I'm not like this perfect person, this perfect mom that society kind of makes you feel like you have to be, right? Like you just have to be picture perfect, and you should be able to juggle all the things, the house, the work, the baby, that's just what's expected of mothers, of women as a whole when you bring that baby home. Like, that's just kind of the world's perception at times. And I couldn't handle the pressure of feeling like I was failing in that aspect. So I did have a plan. Unfortunately, I had a plan to what I say slightly and lightly, in case there's little ears around you, is I had a plan to end my journey here on earth, because I just couldn't take it anymore. I tried to have this facade of, I'm doing great, I'm happy, I'm putting makeup on my face, I'm good at family events. Nobody's going to know any different, right? But that wasn't the case, and I couldn't hide how I was feeling, and what that medication was also helping make me feel, because I feel like it ramped up the symptoms, the thoughts, the horrible thoughts. And I put my son in his bassinet in the bathroom, and I had a plan. I will not go into the full picture of it, but I had a plan in place. I was going to call my husband's work, say there was an emergency, and I knew that he could get there quickly enough that my son would be okay, but hopefully I would be gone from the earth. And that's always kind of hard for me to say, because I look back now and I'm like, look at all the things I could have missed. Postpartum depression and the lack of support and the lack of mental health support that was effective and not demeaning got me to that point. That was my 17 diapers. My 17 diapers was honestly just this daily pressure of not feeling like a good enough mom. And I'm glad that my husband came home that day. What had happened and what had stopped me, my son laughed for the first time. And I took that as my sign of, no, my story is not done here. He needs me and I'm good enough for him. I don't care what anybody else thinks. I'm doing a good job. I'm doing a good job. He's fine. He's healthy. He's fed. He's happy. Nothing else matters in that aspect. As long as he, my son, knows I'm doing a good job and he feels that love and that, being tended to, that's what matters. Everybody else's perception of that doesn't. It doesn't. And that's the thing about social media, right? And I'm going to get into this topic later on one of my episodes, but social media and feeling like you're behind on the times, right? Feeling like comparison is a thief of joy. Someone has said that. And I think I was comparing myself to moms that looked like they had it all together, that were my friends that had babies right around the time I did. And I was comparing myself to them and not knowing they probably went through a similar struggle, maybe not as severe. But I will say, I feel like social media really ramps up that thought process that we just have to be perfect. And if we're not, we're failing. When in reality, that baby was fed, he was happy, he was changed, he had everything he needed. And if he didn't, I made sure of getting it as soon as I could, as soon as my husband could. And I know I'm rambling, but back to my story and how imperative it is to have a support person. It doesn't have to be your husband, your spouse, your like it could be anybody, a family friend, whoever your support person is getting you through that motherhood journey. If I did not have my husband to help me see the light and see what a good job I was doing and being as supportive as possible to me, I don't think for a moment I would be nearly as strong as I was getting through that part of my life, getting through that journey of postpartum depression and anxiety. He came home that day when I was talking about leaving, ending my journey. And I told him what my plan was that day. And I think that was what really snapped him into reality. I think he knew I was sad. I think he knew I was a little bit overwhelmed. But I genuinely think having that open discussion and him being so open-minded to it and supportive and not making me feel like I was crazy or that I was failing was the glue that held me together as he supported me to get me through, honestly, it was like my son's first year of life that I really, really struggled. Once we got over that 1 year hump, I did get better. But I genuinely don't know what I would have done without his support and his love and his being willing to hear me out. He was one of the few people in my life willing to hear me out when I felt some type of way. He didn't make me feel crazy when I felt some type of way or something was worrying me that seemed probably minute to someone else, but it was big to me. I was very much making mountains out of molehills during that time. The slightest things were really overwhelming, and having his support when a lot of people were just trying to kind of push me towards navigating it and not letting me do it in my own pace, he really was my rock during that whole time. So if you know someone or you're in someone's life that is going through postpartum, or you're their spouse, whatever, and they're going through this, the best thing you can do is be there for them and walk them through what they're feeling to help them navigate what is a reality and what preventative measures you're taking to, keep the baby safe, or, it's okay if you go shower. I have the baby, but I'll put the owlet sock on if you have that, I'll put the owlet sock on, or I'll turn the baby monitor camera on and you can have it in the shower so you can still have that self-care, but access to seeing the baby. I know this was more of a deeper conversation, it's a little sobering, right? It's a hard conversation, but the way I see it, if I don't talk about this and I don't advocate, there's another mom out there that feels probably as lost and empty as I did. And she needs someone to tell her that her story is okay to be written that way, as long as she doesn't put the pen down and stop writing it. So if you're out there and your 17 diapers sound similar to mine, or you're just overwhelmed, it doesn't have to be that impactful and significant. Like, it doesn't have to be, moms just need support. We just have to support each other better. We have to get better resources for moms that are going through PPD and PPA. Like, mental health is huge. We have to have a better push of not just assuming one size fits all for PPD and PPA, because it doesn't. It doesn't. We need to be more cognizant, more aware. We need to provide more educational opportunities at the postpartum window there while you're in the hospital or even after. Give those resources. That is imperative to a mother. And I do want to give you some hope too. I did have this with my first pregnancy, and I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I do think that it's more common in first time mothers. I didn't have it with my daughter. I felt more secure. I maybe cried like a couple times going through baby blues, but I didn't go through that. So I want to give you hope and not fear that if you are going through that with your first child and you're scared about the next few, you know the warning signs. The people in your corner should know the warning signs too, and they should know how to support you while you're on that journey. So if you are listening and you are in the realm of postpartum support and you want to come either virtually or here in the podcast studio, I would love to have you on Momstrosity. I promise the topics are not going to be as, I don't want to say somber, because this is important to talk about, but I want to have fun here too and create a good environment. But I definitely want to open up about what my motherhood journey initially looked like, and also give you hope to say, like, it gets better. It gets better. It gets so much better. Just hold on. So many people care about you that maybe don't even know you. And if you're a mom going through this right now, I see you. Your feelings are valid, and you are going to be okay. You are doing a really, really good job. Again, I thank you guys so much for letting me ramble. Hopefully, as I get more used to this, I won't ramble as much and I'll have more consistency. But if there's a topic you'd love for me to touch on, I know a couple people have talked about like mental health. They know I struggle with some anxiety and ADHD stuff. If there's a topic that's important to you, you'd like me to look into it and bring some light onto that, I would be glad to do that. It doesn't have to be, again, a mom topic, parenting topic. It can be a life topic, that maybe is important to you and you feel others should hear that message. I'm all for it. Again, this is Momstrosity podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for your support. I cannot wait to speak with you guys every week, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye.